She's what? I screamed so loud the phone nearly cracked. Alone? At a bus station? Emily was 7. She'd never been to Easton. My parents left her there. 3 hours from home. No phone, no ID, no goodbye. And when I confronted them, they laughed. Called it a character-building test. Said I was too dramatic. But that wasn't even the worst part. They'd been stealing from me for years. My own brother used my name to rack up debt with my parents' blessing. I had one thing they never respected: receipts. And the moment I saw that bus station footage, I knew exactly what I'd do. I'm the woman they thought they could control. They were wrong. They left my daughter behind like she was nothing. I won't stop until the whole world sees exactly who they are. And you won't believe what they tried next. My name is Laura Kincaid, and I'm 45 years old. Each morning, I pack Emily's lunch while she eats breakfast, our quiet ritual unchanged since she was old enough to hold a spoon. Morning light streams across our kitchen counter where my 7-year-old daughter Emily sits, her cereal spoon tapping against the blue porcelain bowl my mother thinks is too plain for proper homes. My parents, Charles and Margaret, and my younger brother David have always chased status over substance, measuring worth in country club memberships and social connections. I've learned to keep everything, every receipt, every email, every cruel text message from Mother about my common choices, filed away in dated journals that line my office shelf. They mock my organizational habits, calling them obsessive. But let me start from the beginning. Friday afternoons usually meant grocery shopping and catching up on paperwork, but this one felt different. Emily bounced, on her toes near the front door, her overnight bag packed with such care, each item folded exactly how I'd taught her. You know that feeling when something's off, but you can't put your finger on it? Now remember, sweetie, brush your teeth before bed, I said, smoothing her hair. And call me tonight? Of course, Mom. Emily wrapped her arms around my waist, squeezing tight. My mother's perfume drifted through the doorway before she did, that expensive scent she'd worn since I was a child. Laura, dear, we need to get going if we want to make good time. She adjusted her designer sunglasses, barely glancing my way. Father stood by their luxury SUV, checking his watch. David's already got the route planned, he announced, as if my brother's GPS skills were somehow revolutionary. David just smirked, loading Emily's small suitcase alongside their matching leather bags. It'll be wonderful family bonding, Mother assured me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. You worry too much, Laura. Always have. I watched them pull away, wheels crunching over the sun-dappled driveway. Emily's face pressed against the back window, waving until they turned the corner. The silence hit me immediately. That hollow quiet of an empty house that even the hum of appliances can't fill. I tried staying busy, sorted laundry, loaded the washing machine, folded warm towels that still smelled of summer. But something kept gnawing at my gut. That mother's instinct people talk about, but you never quite believe until it happens to you. The phone rang just as dusk was settling in, that blue-gray light that makes everything feel slightly unreal. Unknown caller. My thumb hovered over decline before something made me answer. Mrs. Kincaid? A woman's voice, professional but gentle. This is Sandra Mills, station manager at Easton Bus Terminal. We have your daughter Emily here with us. The world tilted sideways. Easton? That's 3 hours away. There must be some mistake. I'm afraid not, ma'am. She was found crying near Platform 3 about 40 minutes ago. She's safe, but quite upset. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys twice before getting them into the ignition. Put her on speaker, I managed already, backing out of the driveway. Emily, baby, can you hear me? A small hiccuping sob came through. Mommy? I'm coming, sweetheart. Right now. Stay with Ms. Mills, okay? I forced my voice to stay steady while the GPS recalculated around night construction. Want to hear about the time I found that family of rabbits in our garden last spring? For the next 3 hours, I talked. About anything, everything. Past birthday parties, funny stories from her preschool days, The time our neighbor's cat got stuck in our tree. Every few minutes, Emily would sniffle or whisper, "Okay," just enough to let me know she was listening. Red and blue highway patrol lights strobed past my windows. Sodium lamps cast orange pools on the asphalt. I kept talking. The terminal was nearly empty when I arrived, just before midnight. A woman in a navy blazer, Sandra Mills, pointed me toward a small figure, huddled on a plastic bench, wrapped in what looked like a quilted jacket from Lost and Found. Emily's hands were trembling. "Mommy!" She crashed into my coat, her whole body shaking with sobs. Ms. Mills led us to her office, where security footage played on a monitor. There they were, Mother, Father, and David, walking away at 5:12 p.m. Just walking away. Emily stood alone for a moment before sitting down on her little suitcase, clearly expecting them to return. "I've notified the police," Ms. Mills said quietly. "They'll want to speak with you." I buckled Emily into the back seat of my car, turning the heater to low. Her eyes were already heavy with exhaustion, tears drying on her cheeks. "Home first," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "Answers next." The dark interstate stretched ahead as I pointed us toward home. The sky was just starting to lighten when we pulled into our driveway. Emily had fallen asleep about an hour into the drive home, her breath fogging little circles on the window. I carried her inside, her weight familiar against my shoulder, and tucked her into bed with the soft blanket she loved, the one that always smelled of chamomile, no matter how many times I washed it. You know those moments when everything feels surreal? Like you're moving through water, trying to make sense of something that shouldn't be possible. That's where I was, standing in my kitchen at 5 a.m., scribbling down everything Sandra Mills had told me on my yellow legal pad. Times, names, badge numbers. My handwriting looked alien, too precise, like someone else was controlling my fingers. The coffee maker gurgled to life just as I finished printing the email from the bus station with the security footage attached. The sun was starting to peek through the blinds, painting stripes across my kitchen table. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then dialed Mother's number. She answered on the third ring, voice crisp as ever. "Laura, why are you calling at this hour?" "Put it on speaker," I said. "I need to talk to all of you." A rustling sound, then Father's voice. "What's this about?" David's theatrical sigh in the background made my teeth clench. I could picture him lounging there, probably still in his designer pajamas, that smirk plastered on his face. "Would someone like to explain?" I kept my voice steady. "Why my 7-year-old daughter was abandoned at a bus station 3 hours from home?" "Oh, Laura." Mother's tone dripped with condescension. Always so dramatic. It was a responsibility test. My coffee mug rattled against its cork coaster. My hand was shaking that badly. "A what?" "A responsibility test," Father chimed in. "Children today are too coddled. We had to walk miles to school in our day. You left her alone, at a bus station, at 5 in the afternoon. I could hear my pulse in my ears. "The word is abandonment." "You're being too dramatic," Father huffed. "Abandonment," I repeated, slower this time. David's voice oozed through the speaker. "The kid needs some grit. We were doing her a favor." "Abandonment," I said one final time. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush coal into diamonds. "Now see here," Mother started, but I cut her off. "Check your emails, all of you. I just sent you something interesting." Subject line reads, "Documented." It's security footage from the bus station, clear as day, showing 3 adults walking away from a 7-year-old girl. "I wonder what the police will think of your responsibility test." More silence. Then David, not quite so smug now. "You wouldn't. I already have." I ended the call before they could respond. The house felt too quiet after that. I could hear the tick of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, and beneath it all, Emily's soft breathing from down the hall. I pulled my chair over near her door and just listened for a while, each small, even breath a reminder of what mattered. The printer clicked and whirred as I drafted a 1-page account of everything that had happened. Dates, times, quotes, all of it laid out in black and white. Tomorrow, after I dropped Emily at school, I'd confront them face to face. No more phone calls, no more excuses. I closed my notebook and set my alarm for 8 a.m. Emily needed normal right now. Breakfast, school, routine. The rest could wait until she was safely in her classroom. I parked in front of my parents' house at noon sharp. The familiar brick colonial loomed against a cloudless sky, pristine as ever. You'd never guess the kind of people who lived inside, looking at those perfectly trimmed hedges and gleaming windows. Funny how appearances work that way, isn't it? My manila folder felt heavy as I walked up the stone path. Mother opened the door before I could knock, wearing her garden club smile like armor. "Laura, dear, you're being quite dramatic about all this." I stepped past her into the foyer, where the grandfather clock still counted seconds with the same stern tick it had during my childhood. Father sat in his leather armchair, reading glasses perched on his nose as if this were any ordinary Tuesday. David sprawled on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. "I brought copies for everyone," I said, pulling out the time-stamped stills from the security footage. The bus station's cameras had captured everything in stark black and white. I placed a set in front of each of them, watching their faces as they looked at the images. Mother's laugh crackled like dried leaves. "Really, Laura, you're being so ungenerous. We were trying to help." "Help?" The word tasted bitter. "By abandoning a 7-year-old? "You should thank us," Father said, adjusting his glasses. "Character building is essential at her age." David didn't even look up from his phone. "She survived, didn't she?" My hands curled into fists. Let me spell out what could have happened. Strangers, traffic, public bathrooms. Do you know how dangerous those are for a little girl alone? And it was getting dark. Did any of you think about that? The ceiling fan whirred overhead, stirring the heavy air. "Would anyone care to tell me who decided to walk away first?" I asked, pointing to the timestamp on the photos. 5:12 p.m. Which one of you led the charge? Mother shrugged, examining her manicure. Father's frown deepened into the grooves around his mouth. David checked his Rolex, as if this conversation was keeping him from something important. "I brought lunch," Mother said, rising. "Your favorite chicken salad?" "No." I gathered the photos into a neat stack. "I'm not staying, and until we have clear boundaries, in writing, about how you treat Emily, we won't be in contact." David's head snapped up. "You owe us more than that. Family loyalty goes both ways, sis." "For what exactly?" I met his gaze. "What do I owe you?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. None of them did. I left the copies spread across their expensive coffee table and walked out. The noon sun felt harsh, throwing sharp-edged shadows across the driveway. My car had heated up like an oven in the short time I'd been inside. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every traffic light caught me, every slow driver pulled in front of me. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, my shoulders were knotted with tension. Emily would be home from school in a few hours. I needed to figure out how to tell her that weekends would be just us for a while. No more visits to Grandma and Grandpa's house. No more Uncle David's stories. The thought made my chest ache, but not as much as the memory of her crying at that bus station. I distracted myself by cleaning the kitchen, scrubbing counters that didn't need scrubbing, reorganizing drawers that were already organized. The stack of mail on the counter caught my eye. I'd grabbed it from the box on my way in, but hadn't looked through it yet. Flipping through bills and junk mail, I stopped at an envelope from Capital One. Strange, I hadn't applied for any new cards recently. I opened it and pulled out a denial letter, addressed to me, Laura Elizabeth Kincaid. My hands went cold. I hadn't requested this card. I hadn't requested any card. The letter trembled in my grip as pieces started clicking into place, one by one, like tumblers in a lock. I spread the envelopes across my kitchen table like playing cards in a losing hand. The Capital One denial. A late payment notice from Macy's. And the worst, a collections letter from some boutique in Hartford, I'd never set foot in. You know that moment when your stomach drops and your mouth goes dry all at once? That's where I was sitting. My hands shook as I took photos of each letter with my phone, making sure to capture the dates and account numbers clearly. The afternoon light slanted through the window, casting long shadows across the paperwork that shouldn't exist. I got up and retrieved my life binder from the top shelf of my home office. A thick, 3-ring monster labeled taxes, receipts, passwords in neat block letters. The washing machine churned in the background, its regular thumping matching my pulse. My laptop whirred to life, and I navigated to the credit reporting sites. 20 minutes and 3 separate reports later, I stared at the preliminary summary, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. There they were, accounts opened 2 years ago that I'd never authorized. A metallic taste crept into my mouth as I scrolled through the details. No, I muttered, cross-referencing addresses. One account listed my parents' street, the same street where David had borrowed my wallet at last summer's barbecue, claiming he needed gas money. Just a quick run to the station, he'd said, flashing that golden boy smile. Left my wallet at home. The memory hit me like a splash of cold water. I opened my email archive and searched for messages from Father. There it was, a thread from around the same time where he'd insisted on helping with paperwork during tax season. You're so busy with Emily, he'd written. Let me take care of these forms for you. I printed everything, spreading the pages across the table. Dates jumped out at me, signatures that almost matched mine, but not quite. I grabbed a highlighter and started marking inconsistencies. David's E. Handwriting gave him away. He always made his 7s with that distinctive European cross-stroke. I'd teased him about it when we were kids. The washing machine clicked into its spin cycle as I created a new cloud folder labeled Emily Safety. Every document, every photo, every piece of evidence went into it. My throat felt tight as I uploaded the files, each one another brick in the wall between us and them. Dusk was settling in, turning the kitchen sink into a pool of shadows. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't needed before. Marissa, attorney. She'd handed me her card at a school fundraiser last year, dark eyes serious despite her smile. Call me if anything smells wrong, she'd said. Trust your instincts. Well, everything reeked now. I took a deep breath and dialed. The phone rang twice before her warm, no-nonsense voice answered. Marissa Rodriguez. Hi, Marissa. It's Laura Kincaid from the Emily's School Fundraiser Committee. My voice wavered slightly. Remember when you said to call if anything felt off? I think I need your help. Laura, she said, and I heard papers shuffling. Tell me what's happening. I glanced at the scattered evidence on my table, at the binder that had tracked my careful life, at the fading light that meant Emily would be home from her after-school program soon. I've found some financial irregularities, I said, the words feeling inadequate. And I think my brother and parents are involved. Can you meet tomorrow? 9 a.m., she replied without hesitation. Bring everything you've found. And Laura, don't contact them about this. Not yet. I won't, I promised, looking at the stack of fraud evidence that had turned my family into strangers. I'll see you at 9. The Bell Tower Diner looked exactly like it, had since I was a kid. Same cracked vinyl booths, same coffee-stained menus, same morning regulars hunched over their eggs. 9 a.m. sharp, and the place was quiet enough for serious talk. Emily sat beside me, tongue poking out as she worked through a maze book I'd grabbed from the dollar store. A short stack of blueberry pancakes kept her occupied, maple syrup forming tiny pools on her plate. Look, Mommy, I'm almost at the end, she held up, her progress, crayon marks mostly staying inside the lines. That's great, sweetie, I said, squeezing her shoulder while scanning the entrance. Marissa arrived right on time, briefcase in hand and reading glasses hanging from a silver chain. She had that steady presence some lawyers develop, like she'd seen every flavor of human nature and knew exactly how to handle each one. Laura, she said warmly, sliding into the booth. And this must be Emily. I love your puzzle book. Emily beamed before returning to her maze. I pulled out my folder and placed it on the Formica table between us. I organized everything chronologically, I said, opening to the first tab. Credit reports, account statements, copies of the denial letters. Marissa's eyes narrowed as she reviewed each document. Classic identity theft patterns, she murmured, making notes on a legal pad. Multiple accounts, escalating amounts. And you're certain about the signatures? That's my brother's handwriting, I said, pointing to a credit application. See the sevens? He always crosses them that way. She nodded, expression grim. First steps: police report, fraud alerts on all 3 credit bureaus, and complete credit freeze. Today, she tapped her pen for emphasis. We need to establish you as the victim before they can spin this. What about Emily? Asked quietly, glancing at my daughter who was now drawing flowers in the maze margins. That's where we need to be strategic, Marissa said, lowering her voice. Identity theft charges could trigger a custody challenge. They might claim you're unstable, fabricating accusations against family. She held up a hand as I started to protest. I know it's ridiculous, but courts get complicated with family dynamics. We need to document everything. I opened another tab. I've got screenshots of all our text messages, email threads, call logs going back 3 years, plus the bus station footage and witness statement from last week. Marissa's eyebrows rose as she flipped through the meticulous records. Your habit of keeping receipts just became armor, she said with approval. This is exactly what we need. She pulled out several official-looking documents. I'm drafting preservation letters to all 3 of them, your parents and brother. This puts them on notice not to destroy any records. We'll send these certified mail today. While Emily finished her pancakes, Marissa outlined our next steps. File the police report immediately. Submit fraud alerts online. Print and notarize credit freeze requests. Document every future interaction with my family. No direct contact with any of them, she insisted. Everything goes through me. Now, I nodded, stomach churning at the thought of such complete separation. But Emily's safety came first. After lunch, while Emily napped on the couch with her favorite purple blanket, I drove to the police station. The fluorescent lights made everything feel harsh and exposed as I filed the identity theft report. The officer took detailed notes, assigned a case number, and gave me a timeline checklist for following up. Make copies of everything, he advised. These cases can take months to resolve. The sun was setting by the time we got home, streetlights clicking on one by one. Emily had perked up from her nap and was chattering about what to make for dinner when I noticed the courier truck idling in front of our house. Are you Laura Kincaid? The delivery man asked, clipboard extended. I signed for the thick envelope, my hands starting to shake when I saw the words, stamped across the front, Petition for Temporary Custody. The streetlight above cast just enough glow to read the first page. My parents' names jumped out in bold type, along with phrases like emergency basis and best interests of the minor child. I clutched the papers to my chest, watching Emily skip up our front walk, backpack bouncing. She was humming the song from this morning's pancake restaurant, completely unaware that her world was about to shift again. I spread the custody petition across my dining room table, each page landing like a thunderclap. The fluorescent kitchen light made every accusation seem to glow with malice. My mother's statement jumped out first, allegations about my emotional instability and erratic decision-making. My stomach clenched as I read her detailed accounts of imaginary outbursts. My father's declaration came next, full of concern about my excessive work hours and unavailability for Emily. He'd twisted my careful budgeting and home-based business into something sinister. The irony of him questioning my parenting choices after abandoning my 7-year-old at a bus station made my hands shake. Then I got to my brother's character statement. You know that feeling when someone describes a version of you that's completely warped? He painted me as volatile, prone to explosive temper episodes. The brother who'd stolen my identity was now calling me untrustworthy. I had to set the papers down and walk a lap around the kitchen just to steady my breathing. I called Marisa right away, not caring that it was after 9. "I was expecting this," she said grimly. "Be in my office at 8 a.m. sharp. We've got exactly 14 days until the emergency hearing." After hanging up, I grabbed the whiteboard from Emily's homework station and wrote "hearing" at the top in bold letters. Below it, I made a 14-day countdown calendar. The sight of those 2 weeks mapped out made everything feel more real and more urgent. "What's that for, Mommy?" Emily asked from the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Just keeping track of some important dates, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Time for bed. We've got school tomorrow." Once she was tucked in, I pulled out a fresh binder and labeled it Emily Care Documentation. Inside, I created sections: emergency contacts, medical records, school performance, home life. You'd be amazed how much evidence of good parenting accumulates when you save everything. I started with the basics: phone numbers for Emily's pediatrician, dentist, and the school nurse. Then I added contact info for our neighbors, her best friend's parents, even our regular grocery store where the staff knew us by name. Each entry represented another thread in the safety net I'd woven around my daughter. Next came the photo section. I printed dozens of time-stamped pictures showing our normal, happy life. Emily doing homework at the kitchen table, both of us gardening in the backyard, her proud smile holding up art projects. Each image captured what my parents were trying to destroy: our quiet, stable world. I fired off an idea email to Ms. Alvarez, Emily's teacher. "I need a letter describing Emily's classroom performance and social adjustment. Any details about her homework completion, friendships, or kind behavior would be greatly appreciated. This is for a legal matter regarding her well-being." Then I called Dr. Shaw's after-hours line and left a message requesting Emily's complete medical records, especially her perfect immunization history and regular checkup notes. Around midnight, I returned to the bus station evidence. The security footage stills looked even more damning when I printed them in full-page size. There was my brother, checking his watch, my father, adjusting his coat, my mother, walking away without a backward glance, and Emily, tiny and alone on that bench. I wrote out my sworn statement about that night, including every detail that burned in my memory. The sharp diesel smell that hit, me walking into the station, the way the PA system crackled announcing delayed departures, the coffee stain on Emily's jacket cuff from where she'd huddled against a vending machine, the station manager's kindness, the security guard who bought Emily a candy bar, the endless drive home in the dark. My eyes were burning when I finally looked at the clock, 1:07 a.m. The whiteboard now showed 13 days until the hearing. I set the coffee maker for 6:30 and collapsed on the couch, the binder hugged to my chest like armor. The coffee maker's gurgle pulled me from a fitful sleep. My neck creaked from the awkward angle on the couch, but the binder was still clutched tight against my chest. The laptop chimed with a new email from Marisa. Exhibits list, version 1. Ever organized a legal case before? It's like building a shield wall, piece by piece. Marisa had mapped out exactly what we needed, labeled A through H. I spread everything across the dining room table while my coffee cooled. Exhibit A was the bus station video, now enhanced and time-stamped. The security company had isolated 4 key frames showing my family's deliberate abandonment of Emily. B contained my phone records from that night, the frantic calls to police, the station manager's number, the GPS tracking data showing my 3-hour rescue drive. I had to pause when I got to Exhibit C. The fraud alerts and frozen credit reports laid out the whole ugly pattern of my brother's identity theft. You know what's worse than discovering someone's stolen from you? Realizing they planned it, step by step, probably laughing about how careful I was with my paperwork while they forged my signature. D through F were the good stuff. Dr. Shaw's glowing pediatric reports, Ms. Alvarez's detailed letter about Emily's classroom, excellence, and notarized bank statements proving my stable income. I'd built this life brick by brick, and now every receipt and record became a weapon in my arsenal. Exhibit G was the police report, official validation that what happened at that bus station wasn't just family drama, but criminal child endangerment. And H? That was my personal log of every interaction since that night, including their attempted justifications and threats. Perfect, Marissa messaged after reviewing my scans. I'm filing for temporary sole decision-making authority. We're also asking the judge to consider the identity theft evidence. It speaks to their character and credibility. While Emily was at school, I drove the copies to the courthouse. The clerk's office had that familiar government smell: paper, ink, and industrial cleaner. The woman behind the counter stamped each set with mechanical precision. Thump, thump, thump. Official, now. Real. That's when I heard the click of designer heels on tile. Mother appeared around the corner, her face tightening when she saw me. She'd always moved through the world like she owned it, but today her perfect posture couldn't hide her unease. "You're embarrassing us," she whispered, close enough that I caught a whiff of her expensive perfume. I met her eyes steadily. "You did that yourselves." My voice came out calmer than I felt. Back in my car, I let out a long breath and checked the whiteboard photo on my phone. 10 days. The countdown felt both too long and too short. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Father. I played it on speaker. "Lawyers make things ugly, Laura. Is that really what you want?" The old intimidation tactics, right on schedule. I forwarded the message to Marissa and added it to my log. Evidence is evidence, even when it comes gift-wrapped in threats. That evening, I copied everything onto labeled thumb drives, one for home, one for the safe deposit box, one for Marissa. Better safe than sorry, right? Then I headed upstairs to Emily's room with a fresh lavender sachet for her dresser drawer. It was our little ritual, something stable and sweet in all this chaos. She'd fallen asleep clutching her favorite stuffed penguin, and for a moment, watching her breathe peacefully, I felt absolutely certain we'd win. I double-checked the locks and turned off the porch light at 11:59. Just as I was pulling the living room blinds shut, headlights swept across the windows, bright and deliberate. I froze, one hand on the cord, watching the slow crawl of that light across my wall. You ever get that feeling when you know someone's watching you? The headlights faded, but I kept one finger between the blinds, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. Sure enough, there was my brother's silhouette on the sidewalk, face lit blue by his phone screen. Probably updating Mother and Father about my unstable late-night habits. I grabbed my legal pad, the yellow one I'd been using since this whole mess started, and wrote, 11:59 p.m. Brother observed outside residence, standing on public sidewalk, texting. No attempt to approach house or make contact. Then I added the date and my initials. 7 years of keeping Emily's baby books had turned me into quite the documentarian. Funny how life prepares you for battles you never saw coming. The next morning, I dropped Emily at school and headed straight to Marissa's office. You know those old law firms with the wood paneling and leather chairs that smell like someone's rich grandfather? This wasn't one of those. Marissa worked out of a converted Victorian with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Made it feel more like walking into a friend's house than a legal fortress. Emily had a half day, so she joined us after lunch, setting up her coloring station at a side table, while Marissa and I got down to business in the main conference room. The practice session felt like preparing for a theater role, except the script was my life, and the audience would be deciding our future. "Remember," Marissa said, adjusting her reading glasses, "when opposing counsel asks about the bus station, they're going to try to make it sound like a reasonable parenting choice. Don't let them minimize it." I nodded, gripping my water glass. "They abandoned my 7-year-old daughter at a bus station 3 hours from home." My voice wavered on abandoned. "Again," Marissa prompted. "Look me in the eye. They abandoned my 7-year-old daughter at a bus station 3 hours from home." Steadier this time. We ran through it all, The timeline, the credit fraud, the threatening messages. Marissa played hardball, throwing the kind of curveballs only a family could devise. "Isn't it true you've always been jealous of your brother's success?" she asked in her best opposing counsel voice. "The evidence of identity theft speaks for itself," I replied, keeping my tone level. Emily looked up from her coloring book and gave me a thumbs up. Back home that evening, my phone was blinking with a voicemail. Mother's voice oozed through the speaker. "Laura, darling, we've drafted a family settlement. Very generous terms. No need to drag private matters through the courts. You're always so dramatic about everything. Remember when you cried at your brother's graduation? Call us back and we'll explain how this can all go away." Not one mention of the bus station. Not one word about Emily's terror or the risks they'd exposed her to. Just their usual gaslighting wrapped in a legal bow. I saved the voicemail, logged it with the timestamp, and snapped a photo of the caller ID. Then I turned to my hearing tote, a canvas bag I'd picked up from the library book sale last year. Inside went the essentials: tissues, the good kind with lotion, throat lozenges, because stress always gives me a scratchy throat, and a granola bar. Court days can run long. The navy dress I'd chosen hung wrinkle-free after ironing, professional but not stiff, dark enough to hide stress sweat, comfortable enough for hours of sitting. I laid it carefully across the reading chair in my bedroom. Emily was already in her pajamas when I went to tuck her in, that same stuffed penguin tucked under her arm. "2 chapters tonight?" she asked, holding up her library book. "2 chapters," I agreed, settling beside her. The familiar rhythm of reading together helped steady my nerves. By the time the 2nd chapter ended, her eyelids were heavy and my voice had found its strength again. Back in my room, I stared at the whiteboard. 1 day. 24 hours until we faced them across that courtroom. I switched off my bedside lamp, letting darkness settle around me like a shield. I woke up before my alarm, that weird clarity you get when your body knows something big is coming. The house was still dark, just a hint of gray beginning to leak around the blinds. My mouth felt like cotton, so I drank 2 full glasses of water at the kitchen sink, watching the neighbor's porch light flicker across the street. You ever notice how the smallest things become anchors when you're stressed? I found myself focusing on each detail of getting ready, the smooth glide of the hairbrush, the precise angle of each bobby pin, the tiny click of earring backs. My hands didn't shake once. 7 years of single motherhood had taught me how to function through fear. Denise, my next-door neighbor, was already up when Emily and I arrived at her kitchen. The smell of pancakes and coffee wrapped around us like a warm hug. Emily's backpack looked extra small against the kitchen chair. "Back for dinner," I promised, holding her tight. She squeezed back hard enough to wrinkle my navy dress. "We'll save you some pancakes," Denise said, giving me one of those looks that carried a whole conversation of support. The courthouse parking lot was half empty when I pulled in beside Marissa's sensible sedan. The morning air had that crisp edge that makes everything feel more immediate, more real. We climbed the stone steps together, our heels clicking in sync. Inside the courtroom, everything was walnut panels and tradition. The wall clock ticked so loud I could hear it over my heartbeat. Mother, father, and brother sat in the front row like they were at some country club luncheon. Mother adjusting her pearl necklace, father with his arms crossed like he was judging a disappointing golf game, brother somehow making scrolling through his phone look arrogant. Their lawyer had that particular smirk I'd seen on my brother's face 1,000 times, the one that said he was used to getting his way and couldn't imagine this time being any different. The bailiff's voice cut through my thoughts. "All rise." Judge Harrison entered, robes swishing, and got straight to business. No nonsense, no small talk, just the kind of efficiency I'd been hoping for. Marissa stood, smooth as silk. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to address the matter of evidence consolidation. The identity theft documentation bears directly on the credibility issues central to this custody matter." I watched the judge's face as Marissa laid out the connection. how you can't trust people with a child when they're willing to steal that same person's identity. His expression stayed neutral, but he nodded at all the right moments. Then it was my turn. The witness stand felt smaller than I'd imagined, but the wood was solid under my hands. Marisa started with that Friday night. Please tell the court about the first indication something was wrong. I took a breath. The call came at dusk. Unknown number. It was the station manager at Easton Bus Terminal, 3 hours away. She'd found my daughter crying alone by the ticket counter. The smell of diesel fuel came back so strong, I could almost taste it. The PA system was blaring arrivals and departures. Emily was trying to make herself small behind a trash can. When she saw me, she just collapsed, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Objection. Their lawyer stood up. The witness is editorializing. Judge Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. Overruled. Continue, Ms. Kincaid. Marisa picked up a remote. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A. The screen on the wall flickered to life. The security footage was grainy but clear enough. My parents and brother walking away from my daughter. The timestamp blinked in the corner. 5:12 p.m. Emily's small figure stood frozen for a moment before darting behind that trash can. You could have heard a paperclip drop in that courtroom. Mother's perfectly manicured hand froze on her necklace. Father's arms uncrossed. Brother's phone stayed dark in his lap. The judge leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on the screen. Ever watch someone's smugness crack like thin ice? Their lawyer's smirk started failing around the third authenticated printout Marisa laid before the judge. By the fifth one, it was gone completely. Your Honor, Marisa said, her reading glasses catching the fluorescent light. I'd like to call Margaret Chen, Fraud Investigations Officer from First National Bank. Ms. Chen took the stand with the quiet confidence of someone who'd testified plenty of times before. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Ms. Chen, Marisa began, could you explain the significance of these signature discrepancies? Certainly. She opened her portfolio. We identified 14 loan applications submitted under Ms. Kincaid's Social Security number. The signatures show distinct variations from her verified signature card. Most notably, she gestured to the projection screen where my alleged signature floated like an accusation. The numeral 7 is written European style with a cross through the stem. Ms. Kincaid's verified signatures never show this characteristic. You could almost hear my brother swallow from across the room. He'd picked up that habit during his semester abroad and never dropped it. Always thought it made him look sophisticated. And the IP addresses for these online applications? Marisa prompted. They trace back to a residential address on Maple Grove Lane. Ms. Chen consulted her notes. The property is owned by Robert and Diana Kincaid. My parents didn't move a muscle, but the air around them seemed to chill by 10 degrees. Marisa nodded. Now, I'd like to play 3 audio exhibits, Your Honor. Each is accompanied by phone company authentication records. The first clip filled the courtroom. My father's voice, all cultured menace. Lawyers make things ugly, Laura. Think about what you're doing. Then my mother's artificial warmth. We can settle this as a family. No need for all this drama about the bus station. Objection! Their lawyer finally found his voice. This is prejudicial. The judge's response was dry as autumn leaves. The evidence goes directly to credibility. Overruled. Marisa moved methodically through the police report number, the credit freeze, confirmations, the whole paper trail of protection I'd built while Emily slept down the hall. But her masterpiece was that final projection. Every document my brother had signed with his distinctive 7s, arranged in damning chronological order. The judge leaned forward, his reading glasses low on his nose. I could almost see him connecting the dots between financial fraud and child endangerment, building a picture of exactly what kind of people would do both. When Marisa finished, their lawyer stood up like his chair had burned him. No questions for this witness, Your Honor. The judge turned to me. His eyes were tired but sharp. Ms. Kincaid, I have 2 questions about the night you retrieved your daughter. I sat up straighter. Yes, Your Honor. How long did it take you to reach the bus station after receiving the call? 3 hours and 12 minutes, Your Honor. There was construction on the interstate. He nodded. And your daughter's emotional state when you arrived? The memory tightened my throat. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. She'd been alone for almost 6 hours by then. Thank you. He checked his watch. We'll take 15 minutes. The gavel tapped, and he disappeared into chambers. My parents stayed frozen in their seats, Mother's fingers worrying her pearls like rosary beads, Father studying the floor tile pattern like it held answers. My brother's jaw clenched and unclenched, a nervous tell he'd had since childhood. My phone buzzed quietly in my lap. A text from Denise. Emily is drawing lilacs. Something in my chest loosened just a fraction. Emily loved lilacs. We'd been planning to plant some in the backyard, make something beautiful grow. The door to chambers clicked, and everyone scrambled to their feet. I steadied, myself against the table, pulse drumming in my throat. 15 minutes had felt like 15 years. The judge settled into his chair and adjusted his microphone. There's this moment in courtrooms, right before a ruling, where the air gets thick enough to cut. This was that moment. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony presented, he began, his tone measured but firm. I find the following facts have been established by clear and convincing evidence. He looked directly at my parents and brother. On the date in question, the respondents abandoned a 7-year-old child at a bus terminal approximately 3 hours from her home without supervision or means of contact. This act demonstrates not merely poor judgment, but a shocking disregard for the child's safety and well-being. My mother's pearls clinked as she shifted. I remembered how she used to adjust them before delivering. Lectures about my disappointing choices. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence of identity theft and financial fraud is substantial and troubling. The court cannot ignore the connection between these criminal acts and the petitioner's credibility regarding their fitness for any form of custody or unsupervised access to the minor child. Marissa's hand found my forearm and squeezed once, just once, but it was enough to keep me steady. Therefore, it is the order of this court that sole legal and physical custody of Emily Kincaid shall remain with her mother, Laura Kincaid. Any grandparent visitation will be supervised and contingent upon the recommendation of a licensed child therapist. The judge paused, removing his glasses. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of criminal identity theft and fraud charges. The court clerk will prepare the necessary documentation. My brother's face had gone the color of old paste. Finally, given the egregious nature of the conduct involved, the respondents, jointly and severally, shall be responsible for all costs and attorney's fees associated with these proceedings. Their lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, we request a stay pending appeal. Denied. The judge's tone could have frozen mercury. The clerk will prepare. The orders for immediate signature were adjourned. The gavel cracked like thunder. Marissa was already gathering papers into her briefcase while my family huddled with their attorney. I just sat there, shoulders trembling, letting it sink in. We'd won. Emily was safe. My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had posted a still from the bus station footage on the courthouse blog. The timestamp was crystal clear. 5:12 p.m. My family walking, away from my daughter. A text from Caroline Mitchell, who ran the hospital charity committee with my mother, popped up. Everyone is seeing this, Laura. I'm so sorry we didn't know. Another buzz. The spring gala planning thread. Updated committee roster attached. I didn't need to open it to know my mother's name would be missing. I texted Denise. Thank you for everything today. Would Emily like pizza to celebrate finishing her homework? She says yes, please. Extra cheese. Still drawing flowers. Walking toward the courthouse doors, I heard my brother's phone start to ring. He checked the screen and his jaw tightened. Whatever the call was, he didn't answer it. Then it rang again. And again. Each time, he hit decline. I pushed through the heavy doors into the late afternoon sunlight. The heat on my eyelids felt like a caress, like the world saying well done in the gentlest way possible. The parking garage waited across the plaza, and for the first time in weeks, my steps felt light. We were safe. We were free. And somehow, that felt better than any revenge could have. My phone pinged with an email from the Arts Guild. Just 3 lines. Membership Committee meeting minutes, April 15th. Motion to remove Diana Kincaid from Board of Directors motion carried unanimously. 3 weeks after the hearing, I woke up to something strange. Silence. No urgent texts. No voicemails demanding attention. No knot in my stomach when the screen lit up. You know that feeling when you've been carrying something heavy for so long that your muscles forgot how to relax? That's what it was like, learning to breathe again without the weight. I scrolled through my morning newsfeed over coffee, and the updates trickled in like steady rain. The hospital foundation had, regretfully, accepted Mother's resignation from the building committee. The Arts Guild posted minutes showing Father's name quietly removed from the symphony patron list. The country club bulletin mentioned revised leadership for the summer gala, with Mother's pet project now in different hands. It wasn't dramatic. No public confrontations or angry speeches. Just the steady, inexorable turning of backs. The polite declinations to lunch invitations. The sudden schedule conflicts for bridge games. Their social circle didn't slam doors. They simply closed them, one by one, with devastating softness. A certified letter arrived that morning. I recognized the return address, Stellar Financial, where my brother had been bragging about his upcoming VP position. Inside was a copy of their correspondence to him. Dear Mr. Kincaid, following standard background verification, we regret to inform you that we must rescind our offer of employment. It went on about credit report flags, fraud alerts, and their rigorous compliance standards. His credit score had cratered after the fraud reversals and delinquency reports hit. 300 points gone, just like that. The golden child's carefully polished future tarnished by his own hand. Mommy? Emily's voice pulled me back. Can we go look at flowers today? The ones that smell pretty? I smiled, remembering the lilac bushes that used to grow wild behind my grandmother's house, before Mother decided they were too common and had them removed. Actually, sweetheart, I have an even better idea. The nursery was quiet that afternoon. Early spring sunlight filtered through greenhouse panels, warming the air with that particular mix of soil and green things reaching for life. Emily's hand in mine was steady as we walked the aisles. This one, the clerk said, pointing to a young lilac with soft green leaves just starting to unfurl. It's a beauty of Moscow. They bloom white with a touch of pink. Hardy stalk, good roots. Give it sun and time, it'll grow strong. I watched Emily pat the soil around its base with her little plastic trowel, her face scrunched in concentration. The late afternoon light had turned golden, casting long shadows across our backyard as we worked. I set river stones in a circle around the sapling, watering slowly to let the ground drink deep. The scent of fresh earth rose up, honest and clean. No pretense, no poison, just the simple promise of growth. Emily sat back on her heels, surveying our work with satisfaction. It's pretty already, she declared, even though it's little. I snapped a photo of the sapling, adding it to my Emily safety folder. A different kind of record now, not evidence of harm, but proof of healing. We spread a blanket nearby, sharing apple slices and watching the lilac's leaves dance in the breeze. Emily leaned against me, quiet but content. Above us, the sky was turning that perfect shade of evening blue that makes you believe in fresh starts. You know what, Sweet Pea? I said softly, running my fingers through her hair. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is plant something new and trust it will grow. She nodded sagely, in that way children do when they understand more than we expect. The lilac swayed gently, its young branches already reaching for the light. I thought about ledgers then, all those careful records I'd kept of debts and damages. But sitting there, watching Emily sprinkle the last drops from her watering can around our tiny tree, I realized some books deserve to close for good. Betrayal ends where courage begins. I whispered and let the evening breeze carry away the last bitter taste of that old hurt.